this sense of like, what's the path forward as far as, because we have this nuclear infrastructure, global, almost like military industrial complex of sorts, you know, and people. I guess I would ask this because I was sort of we talked about this a little earlier, but I don't know if I let you finish your thought, which is how people in Japan started to deal with the realities of what was happening, and you know, I think trying to address this issue head on, it's really hard because what happens with revolts is they tend to spike and then they sort of dissipate over time for various reasons. So it's like building a sustainable global movement to address the reality of nuclear power, catastrophe, and weapons as well. It's a hell of a project to undergo.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, definitely. And it's not that I have a, clear idea of what needs to be done, in terms of process. But only one thing I was kind of want to emphasize is that politics of the world, politics of nation state, negotiation among them, that's gonna, remain, and it will remain. But to me, what's important is something else is happening also. With association of not necessarily representative of Japan or U.S. or France or Korea or it's not like a representation of the nation state, but more like a small enclave. So like my friends here in Snow Creek, small group of people try to build a commune, autonomous living space, and my friend who's gonna speak tonight here. In Japan, place called Sayo. It's a kind of like countryside, about 2 hours from Osaka. My friend has been active in the, urban movement, underclass labor movement. But he and his group decided to build this like agricultural, forestry area, kind of commune, like a communal living space to provide some resources for the urban struggle. And also because one of the good thing about, Japan is like this discrepancy between the price of real estate price. Tokyo and big cities, Osaka, is really expensive. But when you go to this kind of deserted countryside farmland, it's next to nothing. And people, aging farmers, do not know what to do with their land. Their children do not want to continue their subsistence as farmers. So like they provide people like my friend next to nothing for free to use their farmland and, sell the farmhouses, for instance, again, like next to nothing. So they are also fixing a big farmhouse and, started even rice and other vegetables, and also create a kind of common land in the forest. And then try to think of something in relationship with their previous labor movement in the city, in connection. And they are kind of try to get to know people here. And also they visited France, for instance, like Lazard and Tarnac and, similar approaches in France. And Korea also, Another friend from Korea is going to speak tonight, but they are also doing something. So this is another route. Of course, it's going to take long time. Right. It's not a concrete political plan at the moment, but that kind of thing, kind of like a connectivity, not like totally determined by the, politics and economy of nation state, but some kind of like a transversal kind of a relationship. I see some slight hope, and also I myself enjoy doing that. So that's my only thing. But again, like a temporality is so different and frustrating, because this kind of, I have to admit, this perspective is very frustrating, because we don't know how many years it takes to create this network to be substantial. And, if ever ultimately, I believe we have to develop the way to decommission nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
if because we cannot just destroy, go there and sabotage or anything. We cannot know the technology. So we need really sophisticated, scientific, technological knowledge, as well as this kind of ethos for the communal living.
I think what you're describing is a connection of different movements. I think what you mentioned in your writing and maybe elsewhere is this: you weren't involved in the anti-nuclear movement before Fukushima, partly because there wasn't an anti-capitalist, anti-statist framework to it. And do you feel that has changed? Do you feel like there's more of that now in the wake of Fukushima?
I think, not unfortunately, in Japan, the kind of practice I appreciate in Japan is not necessarily like a really, like a protest kind of movement, more like community movement or like, everyday practice. But somehow these practices do not have a good connection with this anti-capitalist, anti-statist, impetus in itself. But their existence is showing the orientation towards that. But their discourse and their thinking is not necessarily anti-capitalist, anti-statist, So in a different dimension, I want to connect them. But, in other countries like France or, Turkey maybe, they have a clearly anti-capitalist, anti-statist, anti-nuke movement, and community movement, to blockade the construction of nuclear power plant and stuff. So, but still, I'm critical of anti-nuke movement in general, but still, it's important to negotiate with the UN and, the bigger picture politics. I mean, no matter what I say, that exists and that's important, so. I want to just emphasize something people usually don't talk about it so much or appreciate so much.
Yeah, well, I feel like, a revolutionary movement that wants to build communes and, this sort of egalitarian structure or something. With something like nuclear, there has to be negotiations or some... I know we're thinking in this almost fantastical future scenario where we had the ability to do this, but let's just imagine that could happen. You'd have to, again, decommissioning nuclear power plants and nuclear warheads and all that. I mean, that is... you would have to negotiate with the power structure to a great degree. You'd have to, and I wonder how you could force the hand of states and industry to be like, you have to decommission this. You have there's no room here to keep this going. We have to put this away.
Exactly, and also we have to get to know people who know the science and technology. I mean, my utopian project is like a last, if that. Ultimately, the movement can like a kind of oust, state power, violent machine of state. But then, my utopian projection is like a state function, which means like a kind of a function of a concentration of some technology and, wealth or like scientific knowledge, some concentration, only for the decommissioning or like clean up operation of pollutions and stuff.
Right.
So non-profit, state power, I don't know. But,
no, it's just interesting to imagine this, what that would look like because modern technology has produced something so volatile and complex that you can't just overthrow the state and expect everything to work itself out, especially with something like this. So, that's just sort of imagining what that would look like. But, I guess one final point, and I really, I guess I mentioned this several times. I think I did cut you off or we went off on a different track earlier, but something that, you've mentioned as well is what happened over the years in Japan is there was almost a kind of a capture or a, sort of a nationalism that emerged after Fukushima where it just sort of reinstated the nuclear apparatus, like the legitimacy of that. Right. And I think that's also a danger almost everywhere, which is the moments that can radicalize people can also move in the opposite direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did that happen to a great degree in Japan? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like nationalism appear in different dimensions, but like the most explicitly, this was ironically, like outlived the COVID situation, but Tokyo Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo Olympics became kind of like a motive drive for the nationalizing, spectacle making for the sake of the nation, and we have to go beyond the disaster and, try to build some kind of I don't think really did it. The original plan was to make area of Fukushima build a big facility for the, foreign athletes to, stay and train and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And involving the locality of Fukushima to more like explicit express purpose was more like try to show that we overcome Fukushima nuclear disaster, And so this kind of operation on the one hand, and also this is a very touchy thing, like food product from Fukushima, like a fish or, vegetables. Mm-hmm. It's a question, of course, question of radioactivity there, And some like a supermarket chain and stuff more emphasize that we have to eat and support Fukushima's food. Mm. Instead of try to be careful. And,
right.
This is like a more like, created the split within the nation. Like, even like, this is like related to the movement split that in the beginning I mentioned, like, like, in the family, like, reproduction, people who care about reproduction, like women usually in the family, more careful and sensitive about where the food comes from to have their children, eat for dinner. They check where it's from and they even bring it to the civic center which can monitor the radioactivity, that kind of thing. But then like usually what you call breadwinner of the family, like or like a grandparents,
Sure.
They say no, we shouldn't make a big deal out of it. We have to continue everyday life, kind of thing.
Right.
And movement-wise, like it's a little bit symbolic. Was that activist ethos of support the weak, support the victims. Mm-hmm. In a sense, I respect it. Some activists decided to go to Fukushima to support the victims of tsunami and earthquake as well as nuclear, thing. And anyway, they try to do whatever they can to help, sometimes work with the government, sometimes NGOs. That's one group of people. And also some radical labor organizers went to nuclear, reactor and tried to organize nuclear workers. So these people are figuratively called those who go north, and which means they decided to, do what they believe at the expense of their risking over radioactive exposure.
Right.
As opposed to that, there are a group of people who prioritize more health and evacuation, everyday practice, and that's more important than anything. So they split after Fukushima. So this nationalism, kind of use this split and more like try to create an environment like priority at this moment of crisis. Everybody should think of the nation and work with the government, So that's the kind of thing,